Thanks everyone for coming. Ina mana, ina waka, ina reo, ina rangatira mā, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Ko moiho no maunga, ko waiho te awa, ko tainui te waka, ko Ngāti Maru hauraki te iwi, ko Shane Tracey-O'Connell toku ingoa, ko taku mahi ki Amazon Korti Games. Huri nua e te whare, ka mihi atu, ka mihi atu, ka mihi atu. Tēnā tātou katoa. Kia ora everyone, thanks for coming along to our session. My name's Shane, I'm born and raised in New Zealand, and in my pepeha I mentioned that I whakapapa back on my mum's side to the Coromandel Thames area of New Zealand. I'm based in Napier, and I work for the Amazon for Games and Startup team here in New Zealand, and I have the pleasure of sitting next to Jachin Bhasme today. Jachin is the co-founder and chief operating officer of Leonardo, and Jachin and Kat from Leonardo have flown over from Australia to be at the conference today. They've had a pretty crazy travel schedule recently, so I'm really glad they could be here with us. At AWS, so the context, I work for the AWS part of Amazon, and we believe that generative AI is going to have a huge impact on all of our customer experiences and applications. They're going to be reinvented with Gen AI. And I was really interested in having Jachin here today because I've recently got into game development myself. And when I was using Leonardo, the company that they co-founded, it helped me realize that I could actually, not being a creative, use some of these tools to actually help me get into this industry. To level set what we're talking about today, we're aware that we're the only thing between you and lunch, so we just feel free, bear with us. We've planned for about 30 minutes of conversation. We might do some Q&A after. Otherwise, you can have a chat with the team at the AWS booth. We've got some slides, but they're purely there to kind of guide the conversation and act as a visual aid. And things we won't probably be covering today is the legal side of the Gen AI and the regulation, because by the end of this talk, the information will be out of date, and we'll just there's no point in getting into it. But let's just dive into it. Tell us a bit about yourself and introduce yourself.
Yeah, so thanks for having me, everyone. So my name is Jachin. Easy to forget. It's Bacon with a J, if it helps you remember. But yeah, I'm one of the co-founders and COO at Leonardo, and yeah, we've been building this product for around 8 months now, and it's been a whirlwind. Absolutely love generative AI and everything it's opened the doors for. But yeah, in terms of my background. Yeah, I grew up in Australia. Initially was born in the Middle East and came over to Australia, grew up over there in Sydney. Always loved technology. Always felt like I had a knack for knowing what was sort of at the forefront or what was going to take off. And not even just technology. I'm proud to say that, when there's fidget spinners came out, I was on that at the start. I started an e-commerce store and was selling those things. And then, yeah, so yeah, always loved that. And same with AI. Towards the start of last year, yeah, got introduced to an algorithm called VQGAN plus Clip, and it enabled creating these sort of trippy AI videos, and made a TikTok account, got a following, once again made an e-commerce store and started selling videos. But yeah, I mean, that's a short background.
Are you a gamer?
Yeah, I absolutely love games. Moving from the Middle East in Dubai, where everything was sort of paid for, you didn't have to pay taxes, or the company paid for all your expenses. Coming here, my family was a little bit frugal to begin with, so when it came to games growing up, it was 6 months of research before buying a game, and really having to convince my parents to buy something for me. So it was usually the bigger titles, GTA, COD. Got absolutely addicted to RuneScape growing up, free to play. I don't know if anyone else in the room has spent a lot of time standing at sand crabs to get a 99, but yeah, that was my upbringing. But yeah, more recently, being able to buy my own console, got an Xbox, and diving back into games has been really great, especially during COVID. Yeah.
That's awesome. And one of the things as well why I wanted you guys to be here was the Amazon ran a global Gen AI accelerator, and it was around the time that obviously ChatGPT was starting to like make a big wave in the world, and everyone started to think about, how this applies in the mainstream and whatnot. And we opened applications, and I think we got like that's not a public figure, and this is being recorded. We got a large number of applications, and Leonardo was the only company from Asia Pacific that got into the global accelerator, and it's just been incredible to see the journey that you guys are on. Let's just get straight into Leonardo. So, like, what was the inception point for it, and can you just give like an overview of Leonardo so the people in the room can understand what it is and what you're working on?
Yeah, sure. So we were actually born out of a game studio. It was called Rainy Studios. They've been building a TCG and recently just launched on Epic. But yeah, our CEO actually previously co-founded that studio and started seeing a lot of the challenges involved in game development. He was heading up the production side, and him being like really particular with his vision and what he wants to see. He realized there was a lot of roadblocks, in the process. I can bring up a couple slides to help make this point. But yeah, so in at the game studio, he realized there was a lot of limitations, high production costs, long development cycles, and because of that, constraints on his creativity. It was a lot of back and forth between artists, and he really knew in his head what he wanted to achieve, but couldn't put it into, couldn't realize it easily. So there's the status quo that I'm sure we're all familiar with, where it's a trade-off between cost, quality, and speed. And previously you couldn't, you could only pick two of the three. But then, after getting introduced to generative AI, we realized that now it's actually possible to achieve low cost, high quality, and high speed.
Which I wish was possible when I used to run a development studio like 10 years ago.
Yeah,
it was never that with customers. So it's really interesting.
Yeah. So I guess in terms of like how we sort of got to that path, I mean, we've both, like myself and the CEO, we've always been interested in like the intersection between art and technology. I mean, me personally, I loved photography growing up, and that fascinated me. I actually started a business back in the day, taking photos at school friends' parties and stuff. Stopped doing that because the last party I did, someone like put a lit cigarette in my pocket. So yeah, quickly got over that. But yeah, I mean, in 2015, Google Deep Dream released their model, and it was really interesting. You could create these like super trippy visuals, take input images, but wasn't really useful in a production context. Just fun to experiment with. Following that, Disco Diffusion was really popular in 2021. This was like when we saw this is what really reignited that passion for generative AI in us. And yeah, we started to see, okay, yeah, this might have actual like use cases and for production. But the only issue was it took like over 10 minutes to generate an image, wasn't scalable. And then after that, early last year, Midjourney came up with their model, which was absolutely amazing. It just opened up all these doors and our eyes to what the possibilities could be. But unfortunately, it was closed source. But thankfully, Stable Diffusion released their open source diffusion model, and from there, we really saw a community grow around it and keep iterating on that. And that was when we started really thinking about, okay, now what can we build? We've got the tools here. So yeah, we put together a machine learning team and set out to build a platform, a content production suite, essentially leveraging generative AI for 2D asset creation as the initial goal. So we launched our MVP Christmas Eve last year, actually, which was a grind to...
Why Christmas Eve?
Because we couldn't get it out any earlier. I mean, it was we had the idea, and then in 2 months we were like, okay, let's get something up. Christmas holidays, people are going to want to try it. We already saw like how many companies were popping up with using generative AI, just started taking off. So really hit the ground running, like late nights to get this thing done. And yeah, we launched Christmas Eve. It was purely targeted towards game developers and game studios. We were doing a little bit of marketing, and yeah, we saw the uptake was really good. Our main feature at the time was model fine tuning. So as a studio, you could come in and like train your own model and your own IP, and then generate images that were style consistent with your art style. So a lot of companies are interested in that.
And is that it's continued to be a thing, right? Like often people think around generative AI that the data set you're using, like if you bring your own IP, is that going to be mixed in with sort of other IP that's like data that's training other models? But that's something obviously that's maybe a bit different with Leonardo.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's always the underlying foundational model, and it's trained on, a large amount of data, and that's constantly evolving. We're working towards also potentially training our own foundational model quite soon. But yeah, I guess when you fine tune a model, you have a few options for like, there's a thing called like an instance prompt, and it's sort of, it's a word to describe what your data set is really encompassing. And then when you generate using your fine-tuned model, if you're generating stuff similar to what you've uploaded as your data set, it'll stick to that. But then if you go and try and generate something completely random, it's also still capable of doing that. So yeah, it's you can steer it in the direction you want to go.
And it is Leonardo going to put like people in the New Zealand game industry out of a job?
It's a fair question, and there's a lot of fear and uncertainty, and it's understandable because it's very powerful technology, and it seems like a lot's changing. But no, we don't believe that's going to happen at all. The best games are the ones where it's not novel concepts; it's like amazing art. The human touch in building a game and designing it is really important, and we see that. So everything we've been building is purely to be used as a tool for augmentation, and we think that's the most effective way to use generative AI.
And how's like the uptick of people using the platform? Like how's that been going for you?
Yeah, really good. Yeah, so we launched Christmas Eve last year, and we were doing a bit of marketing towards game developers, and by the end of Jan, I think we had like 30,000 people on board. 90% of them were game studios and game developers. But then people started to realize like the tools we built were quite versatile and could be applied to verticals across the board. So we had an uptick from like fashion, marketing, interior design, architecture. There's just a plethora of use cases, and YouTubers started covering us organically, and they were naming their videos like, "Is this the new Mid-Journey killer?" And at the time, we were so flattered because like we knew we were nowhere near. Like the quality is just insane, but that's really motivated us, and we've been iterating on what we've built. And yeah, I mean, the like after these YouTubers started posting videos, I mean, within a matter of months, we racked up millions of signups for early access, and simultaneously, we were actually building a Discord community. We saw there was a lot of backlash against AI-generated art, especially on ArtStation and stuff back then with the protests. So we knew there was a sort of yearning for a space for AI artists and people interested in the space to collaborate. So we started building a Discord server, and we've just cracked the third largest, which is insane to say, completely surreal.
It's a ridiculous stat. Like I think I was like 600,000th or something into that. Like, and like even that figure, I was like, that's incredible. Like, and then just seeing the speed that you've got to this stage now. And I think a difference between some of the number 1 and 2 spots of Discord is that like they're also Gen AI companies, but they require you to use Discord to actually do the generation versus having an app like Leonardo that's separate, right?
Yeah. So we really didn't want to do that again. We realized like the novelty of being able to like enter a prompt and then get something amazing thrown back at you was really cool to begin with. But then for professional workflows, the novelty wears off, and then you need more control. So we built out a whole UI UX experience around it, with the idea of adding as much control as possible before and after hitting generate. So that meant offering model fine tuning, and we built out like a canvas tool where you can take images that are maybe 80% of the way there, maybe messed up hands or eyes, and then you can take it onto the canvas, mask out areas you don't like, and regenerate, rather than having to reprompt and do that whole thing. And we've got yeah, almost 300,000 fine-tuned models on the platform. And what that enables is, you know, rather than having to come up with all these super elaborate and deep and like having to prompt engineer what you really want, if you have a vision in mind or art that you've already created, you can train a model and you don't need as many words in your prompt to really realize what you've got in your head, essentially. Yeah.
And like with that, just like that's awesome. Like, and I get it, and like I'm paying for it now. I love it. But the thing that I'm like thinking about right now is like when you look at like those figures up there, like not many, like you know, let me rephrase that. What kind of challenges came with like hitting that kind of scale so quickly, like as a company, but also just like maintaining kind of integrity with the gaming industry and stuff like that as well.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the GPUs were really hard to keep up with. So we were in early access for I think like 4 or 5 months at least, just to manage that load. Yeah, that was the main issue with scaling. And then all the user feedback we were getting was really overwhelming. But yeah, I guess throughout the process, we built out like a BD team quite early because we wanted to hear back from the community. And I mean, we started off targeting game studios and the enterprise. So we've been really in touch with studios and speaking to them, understanding what are their real needs. So a lot of it, you know, a lot of them are using this sort of thing for production, but many of them are also using it purely for concepting and previs and yeah, find it really valuable for especially like tedious tasks. You know, mobile games that require reskinning assets. It's a great use case for model fine tuning. Yeah.
And like how big is the team? Like you know, you say you grow a BD team and the other few co-founders. Like how big's the team in total?
Yeah, so when we launched, I think we were at 5 people, and now we're at 60, which is, yeah,
Are they majority in Australia or are they kind of all over them?
it's all over. But more recently, we've been hiring more Australia-based, Sydney-based, because we just got an office. We want to see people in person. But yeah, yeah, it's all over the world. Yeah.
And what's the community been like? Like on Discord, like I've seen there's just it's so much activity and like is it a really engaged community?
Yeah, yeah. What was interesting to see is, you know, like okay, so I'm a musician, right? I play the drums, and my wife will always do things like she's playing like Taylor Swift in the car, and she's like, "Oh, do you think you could play this?" And I'm like, "Yeah, like I have the skills." So I'm like, "Of course!" Like it's like a challenge for me. And what was interesting to see was a lot of people are upskilling themselves with using AI now and learning how to use the tools, especially even just Leonardo, like learning how to use all the tools on offer. And it's been awesome to see how supportive the community is when people have questions. Like they want to show off like what they know. It's like yeah, it's a whole new toolkit that people are becoming really familiar with, and it sort of feels like a superpower a lot of the time. Even just ChatGPT and LLMs in general too. So it's been great to see, like, yeah, when you jump onto the community page, people have all sorts of use cases, and they're asking, how can I get this? How can I fix the hands? How can I like change the background? And everyone's super supportive, willing to help, and yeah, it's great to see.
Yeah, so you've got a team of 60, but like you can also lean on the community to do a lot of the like work of supporting each other. Is show of hands in the like who has used Leonardo in this room? Interesting. But who's used a Gen AI tool? Okay, that makes sense. Um, so like hypothetically, let's say I'm like a art director of a studio here in New Zealand. Like how would I best leverage the tool to kind of support my business and my team?
So I've actually got slides for this, but it looks like they just died. Um, oh, there we go. Yeah, I mean, as an art director, you know, using the example of JJ again, where he was heading up production, for him, what really came in handy was like having the idea, and rather than, you know, going through the process of back and forth, knowing how picky he is, and then having to keep pushing back on artists, it was, you know, being able to at least create a mock-up of like what he's sort of envisioning to then give to an artist to work off. Um, that's like one of the most useful use cases. But then, you know, as a game studio, like jumping onto the platform, We've got a bunch of generalized models on there which are capable of doing a bunch of stuff. Essentially, can generate anything depending on how you prompt it. But to really hone in on your style and your niche, you've got the option of fine-tuning models. So you can do it for items or styles or anything. So in this example, if you wanted to generate these fantasy-style helmets, you just jump onto the platform. We've got a whole UI. You can upload a data set of like 10 to 15 images to train your own model, or you can use an existing one created by us or the community. And yeah, 10 to 15 images, you create the data set, train the model, and then, if you trained on medieval helmets, for example, you can easily create more of those. But then when you want to add variations, the cool thing is you can retain stylistic consistency, but thematically deviate. So in this example, we're adding variations by adding things like tentacles or colorful holographic, and yeah, you get all sorts of variations. In terms of style, this is an example of Rainey's use case for their TCG. So they had a bunch of cards which their artists had already created, trained a model on that, and then were able to generate more cards in a consistent style, even though they're completely different sort of characters and different contexts. And once those cards are created, they put these frames on them afterwards. And yeah, same for like isometric sort of buildings. And we've come out with new features, like one of them being alchemy, where you can create these really high fidelity environments for your games. A lot of it may not be for production. A lot of it may be for the concepting side of things, but it's really useful if you're struggling to go from the 0 to 1. AI comes in really handy, but also if your artists already have an idea, have sketched things out, there's ways to leverage it that way. In terms of the canvas, a lot of people have been training models on like these isometric chunks for their games, and then you can generate isometric chunks for their games, and then you can generate these tiles, chuck them onto the canvas, and then in-paint and out-paint around them to fill out an entire environment.
And just on that, like with the environments, like what's the tie-in to, Unreal Engine and like Unity? Like how do I go from generating to using?
Yeah. So we're actually building out integrations to make that more seamless. Right now, it's, you export the assets and take it in there. But we've launched a Unity plugin where you can use the 2D image generation and actually 3D texturing, which is something I haven't touched on yet. But essentially, you can upload an untextured 3D object, and if it's got a UV layout, even better, enter a text prompt and it'll generate and project the texture onto the object. And you'll have your normals, displacement, roughness, depth maps all generated and ready to save or import straight into Unity or Unreal. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Like today, I think was the screen day of NZGDC. So there's kind of the game studio, and then the kind of on the other side of things, there's I guess like the film industry, and like how's Leonardo relevant for the film industry?
Yeah. So, I mean, the platform's capable of generating anything essentially, and we've had recent interest from film studios. We've been coming out with new features recently to like enhance like photorealism and stuff for more realistic looking outputs. So for previs and storyboarding and things like that, there's been a lot of interest from the film industry. I don't think they're trying to use anything in production just yet. There's still some contention there, but yeah, on the storyboarding and previs side of things, most definitely. So I can show you some examples of a new photoreal pipeline which we came out with a couple weeks ago, and these are images that were generated using that. And yeah, the quality of them has just been pretty insane to see how high fidelity we can get with just text prompts right now.
Why did you create the photoreal model?
Yeah, we realized there was like when you generate humans and stuff, there was this sort of like airbrushed look. Midjourney's always been great at generating realistic outputs, and we're sort of trying to close the gap there. And we think we're sort of reaching that asymptote of how good images will get using Gen AI. But we had to close that gap between, realistic looking images. So for humans and people, that was like skin looked really airbrushed and faces looked too perfect a lot of the time. So that photoreal pipeline aimed to add more texture to faces. more flaws, and it made a big difference.
Yeah, awesome. I think it's an area I don't know a huge amount about, but I really like the look of the images you're sharing. Like it's awesome.
Yeah.
The future of Leonardo, right? So at the moment, I log on, I use it. Game studios, film studios, by nature collaborative. So like, is that in the pipeline and where you're heading with Leonardo?
Yeah, definitely. So at the moment, we've built out all this tooling, but it's not easily usable for teams right now. So yeah, we're working towards more enterprise offerings and enabling teams to collaborate. So one of the things with generative AI is you can generate a lot of assets, and asset management is super key. So building in really good asset management teams, having shared workspaces and shared assets. And then, the Canvas being like a collaborative tool similar to Miro or Figma. We're working on building that out. And then we've got an enterprise API that we're about to launch now, which there's a lot of interest in. And teams are looking forward to leveraging the platform, and we're super excited to get them on board. Yeah.
Like, so when you say enterprise, like I picture like giant corporation, but like that's a kind of professional way of interacting with Leonardo, right? It's not like it's just for enterprise customers. It's like just a way that third parties can connect in and directly integrate to their pipelines.
Yeah. Sorry, when I say enterprise, it's more that the API is capable of scaling, but we also have a regular production API. The main difference is feature parity with the platform and concurrency limits. So, a lot of companies that are building generative AI apps like Remini, I don't know if you guys have seen that recently. They turn your LinkedIn, they generate LinkedIn headshots for you. It's like a really simple workflow that can be done on Leo. And with access to the API, you can just build an entire app off the back of that.
Can we do that after I haven't updated my LinkedIn profile in like 10 years. Okay, can you help me sort that out?
Yeah, you can train them.
Well, the one thing that I was actually like, we were creating some QR codes for the event to put on our coffee cups, and I've seen some incredible QR codes, like, and the ones you created like as a proof of concept, like, I think it's such a unique way to like use, because like they don't have to be like the one that you're seeing on the table in front of you, like that kind of static thing. They can be beautiful. But I don't have the examples. I just thought of that in the moment, but.
That's a good point. Like the way we did those is using control nets, and that's, I guess, one of the other layers of control you can have. Say you've got a certain sort of composition that you like, or especially like interior design, they want to retain this composition. You can upload an image, use a control net to either retain like depth or edges or even poses, and then generate images that fully match that. So yeah, similar sort of thing with the QR codes there.
Yeah. And like just sort of going back to that thread of the kind of future of Leonardo and where you're heading the roadmap. Other than collaboration, is there anything else that's kind of top of mind for you going forward?
Yeah, we're continuing to build out more interesting tools, potentially some LLM integration to help out with things like prompting, and even a storyboarding feature is in the works. Yeah, we've got I think we've got like 20 simultaneous projects running right now. So there's a lot we're working on, and the ML team is really, under the pump. But everyone's super excited to be building in this space, and we're excited for what the future holds.
That's really cool. Do you want to do Q&A?
Yeah, we can. Yeah.
There? Does anyone have a question? Over here? Yeah? Go for it.
Steal one. There we go. Thanks. I'm sure we can hear you, Dan. Dan O'Brien, ex-Amazon Web Services startup team, used to work with Shane. But great presentation. It's amazing just seeing the images, and I've had to play with the tool as well, and it's just incredible. Just a question about the ML team side of things. You said you built out an ML team. There's a lot of work they're doing. How would a company build that? How did you do that? How did you go about building out the ML team really quickly and skilling them up and getting them going?
Yeah. So the way we got started is pretty funny, actually. So, when JJ and I, the CEO, we realized we wanted to do this, we were experimenting and tinkering ourselves, but we knew there was a lot more depth to this, and we were like, okay, we need some actual like ML talent here. So at the time, that was around when Disco Diffusion was out. We actually jumped into Discord, found people who were super passionate about what they were doing, and reached out and said, we're thinking of starting a project. Do you want to jump on board? And we found two guys, Ethan and Sammy, who are actually co-founders of the project through Discord, who had never met before, and they ended up being co-founders. And one of them was a PhD who did some work on like 3D, like generative 3D side of things, and the other was actually studying neuroscience, but just happened to get like really deep into ML. The guy's like 20 years old, like absolute genius. And I mean that was the start. And then we started to look for more people. Luckily, we had a contact who was doing heading up AI for like an insurance company, and knew how to manage teams, build teams. So we got him on board, and then we started building out, a back-end ML team, the R&D side of things, which was super important to us to actually progress the space, not just build wrappers around open source tech, and then the model trainers and fine tuners and stuff like that. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
All good.
Hey, super interesting discussion and stuff. Just following on from that question, how helpful was it getting into that AWS sort of program and expanding, I guess, your reach into other people, or how was Amazon helpful in that relationship?
Yeah, extremely helpful. We joined the accelerator program, and the credits are always great from AWS. But yeah, Shane is so happy you asked that question right now. No, it's honestly been amazing. Like the support we've been getting from AWS has been great. The introductions, even just like with trying to raise money for a project like this, has been. You've been super helpful for that, so we really appreciate everything. And on the accelerator side, we were assigned like business and technical mentors, which we needed because we were scaling faster than any of us have ever experienced before. And we've built this company on the back of a culture of trust, which we've done on a small scale, but never at this scale. So getting really good advice from our business mentor on how to build out the team, HR practices, the need to really get an org chart going sooner than later was super useful. Yeah. So we're really appreciative, and the GPUs have been great too. Yeah.
Oh, awesome. Congrats.
Thank you.
In terms of the film industry, would this be able to be used for example, animating an entire film, like let's say 2-hour movie? Could you use just Alchemy to animate an entire film?
Right now, an entire film I think would be difficult. We're doing R&D into video to potentially make stuff like that accessible, but at the moment it's purely 2D images. People are trying it using things like Runway's Gen 2. I don't know if you guys have seen, but it's really amazing at turning 2D image and animating that. But whether it's actually production ready as of right now, I don't think so. But I think in no time. If I like, people always ask me like, can you predict the next 5 years? And it's like I can't even predict next week, to be honest. Yeah.
I can't even predict the next 5 hours.
Yeah.
On that though, on that there was I saw an example of like a music video. Like we don't have to say like who, but there was organization that did use Leonardo to kind of build a music video, right? So it was pretty cool.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I actually haven't seen that. But some of the use cases are insane. Like I was telling you yesterday, there was like a Swedish furniture company, construction company that wants to do a campaign on like taking images of buildings built with concrete and then turning them into buildings made of wood as like a sustainable construction marketing campaign. And it's like stuff we didn't even realize was possible or was useful, but they've already tried it, tested it, it works. There's some really cool ways to use it. If there's one piece of advice, it's really worth diving in and just getting your head around what's happening in the space. There are areas that are contentious, and it's an evolving space. We're well aware of it, and yeah, we'll get there eventually, but it's super exciting. Yeah.
Is there any other questions in the room?
Hi. My question is, how on earth do you QA this sort of software and processes? Because it's all like there's lots of like quantitative things you can check, but there's so much like subjective things. So how do you figure those out and get them right, I suppose?
Yeah, that's a great question. We have an internal QA team to help out with this, but I think the most valuable thing has been the community, getting them to assist with this side of things. Yeah, it is very subjective. There's biases involved in a lot of these models, and navigating around that, even like moderation and prevention of people generating egregious stuff. Like there's a lot of work to be done, and there's many lines where you don't know where you stop at. So yeah, it's been an interesting one. That's also evolving within Leonardo, but having the community and more people involved in those discussions, I think has helped a lot, to get a more generalized understanding rather than a few people calling the shots on what's acceptable or not. Yeah. Awesome.
Is there any last things in the slides that you wanted to share before we wrap up?
I mean, if you're interested, I know we're holding you back for lunch, but Alchemy is a new pipeline we released recently. It's not as photoreal, but it can do like really cool.
What was that? Alchemy?
Yeah, Leonardo Alchemy. We're going for like this Renaissance themed sort of thing, but it can generate like really cool sort of like slightly airbrushed and CG looking images, which are super fun to generate. Yeah, and then beyond that, I'm not sure if there's much else.
Yeah, all good. I just wanted to say like thanks for making the effort to come to New Zealand, and I'm going to make sure there's a drum kit for our talk next year. If you'd like to have a one-on-one chat, if you still had a question, the Leonardo team are going to take over the AWS booth for the rest of the day. So you can just find them out the front and have a chat with them. Can I get a round of applause for Jachin and everything they're working on?